You're listening to the Cantina Cast, your home for thought-provoking Star Wars talk. Join Albert and Jonesy in breaking down the latest news, trailers, movies, and of course, your favorite characters from a galaxy far, far away.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Cantina Cast. This is episode 254, and tonight we have a whole brand new batch of listener questions, and we'll be spewing a whole bunch of speculation here, ranging from Carbonite to Beards to George Lucas himself. And here with me tonight, as always, is the only person with all of the answers. Please welcome TV's Jonesy. Jonesy, welcome back to the show.
Thank you for having me. It's good. Carbonite's a pretty apropos word because it's been colder down here in Texas than we're used to this time of year.
Colder and wetter, and I'm in a water boil right now, which is super exciting. Let me tell you, we have to boil all of our water, so it's
that sounds terrible.
Yeah, it's part of living in a third world country, Jonesy. It's just kind of what you do. It's everyday life for us. So
don't say that. People will believe it about Texas.
Yeah, no, yeah, it's been crazy. Like everything has to get boiled, and I know that's not super exciting or even Star Warsy, but it's been a very different kind of life the last 3 or 4 days. And now they're saying it's going to go anywhere from 10 to 14 more days still. So, Wow. It's just bizarre. Like never would have imagined that we would have to do all this nonsense. But hey, nonetheless, we're getting by and things are better. So how about you? What's going on with you?
Getting ready to do some travel for dance. So that world is firing up.
Yeah, man. Dance dad. So yeah, you'll have to excuse me or pardon the clearing of the throat. We've got a lot of crap in my throat. Anyways, let's get into this. We've got a whole bunch of questions we got to get to. News was a little bit light this week. We really didn't have too much to discuss, and I think what we'll do is just kind of start with John Williams. Is recently we're recording this on October 24th, but we're getting word that he's ill, and thankfully it doesn't sound, at least from what we've seen from the press releases and from his family, that things are too serious. But it was enough to kind of get him in bed or at least into a hospital so that he could get some rest and recover and all of that. So I think they've canceled some of his appearances. I think he's running with the London Orchestra right now. What's the latest, I guess, on that?
Yeah, latest is that he was in the hospital and I think he may have had to go to the ER. But again, you're right. They're not really saying much. So hopefully that means it's not serious. But they've canceled his appearances, but they're still going on with the appearances with the London Symphony, with the replacement conductor. And they're very appreciative of him stepping in and taking over for that. And of course, he's super gracious. He wrote a nice letter apologizing profusely that this was even a thing. But it does happen. And we always get a little bit concerned when Twitter starts blowing up with trending names because sometimes that's not the greatest of news. So hope for a speedy recovery from John Williams.
Yeah, absolutely. And he's not a spring chicken. I mean, the guy's 86 years old at this point. So
with plenty more to go, I hope.
Yeah, right. Yeah, definitely there. So yeah, speedy recovery. All the best to him. I guess the only other thing outside of leaked photos that weren't leaked photos from episode 9, which is hilarious if you're into that stuff, is we did get a picture of George Lucas on set with Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni.
Right, yeah.
So someone said they were the Holy Trinity. I don't know if I'd go that far. I mean, Jon Favreau's certainly made his mark already, but come on.
Right, but we don't know about him. We don't know how he fits into Star Wars yet. So.
Yeah. Well, outside of Pre Vizsla and some of the other stuff he's done.
Rio, yeah, I mean he's done some stuff.
Yeah, Rio.
We haven't seen him take the reins of a feature, or a feature.
So take it easy, guys. Take it easy. It's not a Holy Trinity just yet. But anyways, nonetheless, it was a cool photo. Definitely to see them all together and to know that, I just wonder what those conversations are like. So I think The Mandalorian's looking, and it's still early, but they're doing all the right things and it's looking like it's going to take the right direction. So I'm super excited.
We've got a question about George Lucas later on, but generally speaking, it's nice to just see him involved, see him present and that he's supporting these directors and the writers and the franchise in general, even if he's not in the public spotlight. I think it's just nice to see him there and involved.
Yeah, definitely. You're right. It does hit on a question that we've got a little bit later. So with that, that was really it, guys. Sorry, we don't have a whole lot that's going on right now. So this is a calm before the storm. Maybe we'll get a bunch of information next week. We will see. So we will.
I'm sure there's a subset of listeners that are probably like, thank God we don't have 20 minutes of news this time.
5 minutes of 5 minutes as opposed to 15 minutes of news. So you're welcome.
Right.
We'll give you 10 minutes back. All right, let's do this. Let's do the questions. And as usual, we're going to start off with our Patreon supporters. And then depending on how much time we've got, we'll hit some of the other stuff that comes in via fan mail or Discord or any of the other social media outlets that we've got out there. But
yeah,
we'll start
the hard hitting question right off the bat. Don't we?
Oh, man. So right off the bat, Stargate Pioneer, and I'm going to throw this to you first. Sorry.
Oh, yeah.
What was the biggest mistake Disney has made since owning the franchise? What has been the biggest mistake Disney has made since owning the franchise?
Oh, man, we're trying to be friendly here. We'll pull the gloves off early. The biggest mistake I think they made was they rushed. It seems like they rushed a lot of development with the timetables and being really aggressive with what they announced and the general timing that they wanted to release it all.
Yeah.
I think that has largely been the biggest mistake. And we've seen them now, take some of that back or, put the brakes on a little bit. Let's get a more clear strategy about what we want to do rather than the Marvel approach. And I think that's you learn from your mistakes. And so we hope they're learning from that mistake. But I think that's, if I were to be critical of one general thing, it's more of this, the direction that they took with the movies, I think in particular. We have another question here in a minute. That's a more positive take on that. But what do you think about that so far?
Yeah, I would agree. It's a larger systemic issue. And this isn't like, hopefully no one's expecting us to go, well, they should have made this lightsaber that, or this character should. And that's not really what we're neither one of us is really concerned with that stuff, even though that's important to us. At the end of the day, I think we're both more focused on the larger systemic issues, and what you've said is pretty much in line with what I think. Mine was kind of more specifically around Maz Kanata. No, I'm kidding. It's it was more around the
lack of Mara Jade.
The lack of Mara Jade. Thank you. We've got those both in within the first 10 minutes of the show. But
yes.
No, but allowing the movie directors and the writers to have almost too much control over the story and the feel of the movie, that may go partly with what you're saying in rushing it, right? They've got to get it out. And so, maybe they loosen the reins a little bit there, but it's just that disjointedness that I keep going back to with 7 and 8. The Lloyd and Miller thing, you could throw that in there with Solo as well. Of just the story arcs and not really jiving with, maybe what we have come to know and feel for what a Star Wars movie is. Now, don't get me wrong. It's really hard to say that Disney's made any mistakes when you see the amount of money that they've made from all of these films,
right.
Solo included. All right, by all accounts, it made a lot of money. So it wasn't really a failure.
Seems to be doing well in the home release market too.
Yeah, I mean, everybody that. It just seems like everyone that didn't go see it in the theaters at least is given it a shot to go pick it up on home release.
Yeah. Well, and Ron Howard even had a tweet the other day that said that the home release feedback that they're getting is more in line with the initial release data or the exit polls, if you will, out of the theater. And he was very proud and encouraged by that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, there might be something there to that.
Yeah. So, I mean, again, to go back to the question, it is very hard to say that they've made any huge mistakes or, the question is really about their biggest mistake. And I would say, it's probably about the rushing and maybe not having some control over the overall storyline. There's another question later on that I'll dive into what that means for me, at least a little bit more. But I mean, maybe we throw in, is it fair to throw in the Battlefront 2 debacle in there as well?
No, I won't lay that at the feet of Disney. Lay that at the feet of the developers.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right.
I think they trusted EA to make those decisions, and it didn't work out. And I think Disney probably stepped in. And by all accounts, that seems to be what happened. It would be a bit unprecedented for a parent company to really step in like that, but this is a very important franchise for Disney. So I think that would be apropos for them to do that. But yeah, I think generally we want a clearer strategy. I think they tried to do the strategy and it just didn't quite take because, again, it wasn't cohesive enough for us to really make sense of what that direction was looking like and what path did they want the franchise to go.
Yeah.
beyond the core trilogy. And then we get these kind of ancillary movies, which again, I'm not really complaining about those potential stories. It's just, I think we're also wanting something new.
Which is a good segue into Utini's question.
Utini, yeah. So what are some of the great things Disney has done since owning the franchise?
So I would say first and foremost, and this is my perspective, my opinion based on my relationships, I think they've done a great job of expanding the fan base more than anything. I mean, especially with like girls and women. We were at a totally different time. I mean, Star Wars has always been cool, but growing up, it always felt like there were closet fans that really didn't want to come out. There were people that felt the series was maybe too unapproachable for them. And so, you'd have these conversations in the 80s, even the 90s, 2000s, whatever. And it always felt like there was more and more people were coming out and saying, oh, yeah, I'm a Star Wars fan. But it wasn't really as cool. It wasn't as available as it maybe is today. And so I think they've done a really good job there with that. It's everybody talks about it. Everybody, even people that I would never have expected to have an opinion one way or the other about this stuff seem to these days. So that kind of speaks to just how much it's come in and been accepted into our just everyday lives, everyday kind of culture thing. The female characters themselves have been awesome. I think we've got a lot of great ones to root for. If you go back to the days of the original trilogy, we had Leia and Torrin Farr, and that was it. She's the, ready ion cannon fire. That was her line. That was the only other female that was of significance in the series. And now you think about it, and we've got, goodness, Rey, Jyn,
Maz.
No, we don't have a Maz. Enfys Nest, there's a whole bunch of characters that we could talk about here, but I think they've done that really well. The other thing is I think they've made some great products. And so this is what I was speaking to earlier. Yes, they've made some mistakes here and there, but we've been given Rogue One, The Force Awakens, The Last Jedi, Solo, Rebels, from the video games themselves, even though I don't know. I was kind of lumping those in there to some extent, but we got Battlefront 2 during this era. We've got Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes, which is an amazing mobile game. So, I mean, they've got a lot of things that they've done. They've made some really good products. They've done really well, I think, with the IP and expanding that as they have. And then I guess lastly is the making the comics and the books canon. Like that stuff was always second class work, right? That really had no bearing or influence on the canon and the main storyline from the movies themselves. But, and you could argue that even now that they are canon, they really don't have a lot of weight. Some of that stuff is frivolous. Some of it's just kind of on the surface and really doesn't impact anything one way or the other. But it is canon. It's true. This stuff actually means stuff. And that was always a problem that I had with reading. As much as I loved the EU, as much as I loved reading the comic books, reading the stories, and playing the role-playing games and buying all that other stuff, at the end of the day, I'd go to bed sad because I knew that none of it was really real. It was real enough to me, but in the grand scheme of the canon and all that,
see it.
You never see it, right? It was all superficial kind of stuff. So yeah, that's cool. I think it's great now. I feel better about my purchases. I feel better knowing that even though it's a minor story that will never have any impact whatsoever, I thought it was great. I thought it was cool, and it's legit. So I think that they did a good job in kind of straightening all that up. So what about you? What are some of the things they did?
That's a really good point, and I like that when Disney gets involved, all of a sudden it opens up, because everyone likes Disney in some way, usually. Well, not everybody, shouldn't deal in absolutes, I suppose. But most people really enjoy Disney for some reason or another, or their kids like it, so they like it enough because of their kids, or something to that effect.
Right. No, you agree.
But you're right. As soon as Star Wars went into the Disney umbrella, and not only with the marketing machine and the production of new merchandise and things like that, but you have just this demeanor about it that's ultimately more acceptable to the masses. And Star Wars was already, like you said, was already very, very popular. So it's not really in question that it was popular, but all of a sudden now it's at every single level.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter how old you are. I see people with Star Wars shirts all the time. I've seen them grandparents' age all the way down to infants, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not that they're fans necessarily, but clearly someone is. But one of the really great things I'm excited about with Disney, and it's taken us a little while to get here, is that we have content really for all ages now, and in a variety of that content. And I'm really excited in the TV space. So you don't have, and I know we talk about potential Star Wars fatigue, and that type of, potential problem or whatever we might have with that. But what I like about it is that we have smaller things to fill the gaps. You had Rebels, you had Forces of Destiny, you had Freemaker Adventures. I know some of these things were in development maybe before Disney took over, but they kept them or they let them go through a natural conclusion. And now we've got Resistance and we've got Jon Favreau. So we're getting this variety now that we've never had before, that we don't have to rely solely on the movies to visualize and experience something that we enjoy so much. And I think the comics are such a great example as well, because you have some really fantastic writing teams on these comics, and they're now given the opportunity to create and develop new characters, but as well as expound on certain areas of characters that we know that we didn't know the in-between stories before. And again, I know I've been a little bit critical of, do we have to know all of the in-between? But sometimes it's really cool. So like, what happens to Vader right after Revenge of the Sith? I mean, we've asked these questions over and over and debated it for years. And so now we're going to get a more definitive, version of that story. And do we need to hear and see and know all of this stuff? No, debating it is fun. But like you said, now we have something that's tangible, and that is the way it is. We may not always like it, or we may disagree, but that's something else to debate from then on. And there's still a lot of cracks for us to go and dig into and speculate and have fun with friends and conversation. But so I think that's what I really enjoy about this, is that you have a machine behind it. When you're just Lucasfilm by yourself, you have finite resources.
Yeah.
Now you're Disney, and you don't have unlimited resources, but you have a much bigger pool of finite resources. So right. I think that's the part I'm most excited about. We have a Disney park going in California for Star Wars and in Florida. They're very, I don't think we would have got that if Disney would have done it. You'd have these little pockets of this ride or that ride. And now you have immersive environments, immersive hotels. I mean, these things are unbelievable. And if you have the opportunity to enjoy them, I'm not saying everybody's going to be able to go to enjoy those, but if you do, hopefully it's a insanely awesome, quote unquote, magical experience that we would otherwise never have, but all of us have always dreamed about.
Yeah.
And I think that's what Disney's all about.
Yep. 100%.
So
that's,
anyway. All right. Well, I've checked my shareholder box.
Yep. There you go. Congratulations. So he's got another question here. Which Star Wars character would be your best friend? He thinks his would be Rey, but more likely old Ben Kenobi, which I think is funny.
That sounds about right.
Sounds about right.
Yeah. So who would, I just spoke a lot. Who would be your best friend then?
So here's the thing about this question, like, as I'm reading it, I don't know if he's asking who I would like to be my best friend or who would most likely end up being my best friend, because
I think it's the latter. Yeah.
Yeah. Because I think if I had to pick somebody who I would like to be my best friend, I think it's going to be, I would either like Solo or Cassian Andor, just because, I don't know, we're three cool dudes, charming, witty, a little dark, a little edge to them. But more than likely, if I had to pick who would end up being my best friend, I'd probably get stuck with like 3PO or JJB. So I don't know. Chewie may be the ultimate best friend though. So
it would be the ultimate best friend.
I mean, if I could pick, it's going to be Chewie. Yeah, those are my answers. How about you?
Mine would most likely be R2D2.
Oh yeah, why is that?
We would both get into a bunch of trouble. He likes playing pranks and kind of joking around and having a weird sense of humor.
Yeah,
which I like to do that stuff, but it's difficult to do that with people. So I have a feeling that he and I would feed off one another quite a bit.
Yeah, that's
especially
funny.
With inappropriate comments to 3PO.
Yeah,
I can definitely see me doing that one.
So I think I've had a number of friends growing up that were very similar to 3PO. So maybe I should just go with that. That was the first answer that came to mind. So
Chewie's another great one though, because I value loyalty in people and trust. And who's more trustworthy than Chewbacca?
Yeah, maybe R2, but
yeah, R2 fits that too. Yeah, I mean that's the thing. He's always there when you need him too, right?
Right. All right. On a home release of a movie, how long and what special features are needed for it to feel at least adequate? What makes them satisfying to you? Yeah,
we touched a little bit on this last week with the Solo review. And this is Utini's question again. We've got numerous questions from folks this time because it's been a few weeks. This is a tough one. The deleted scenes historically, and I think I touched on this last week, they they typically are going to fall short. There's a reason why they were left on the editing floor. And, so I like a couple though that have something interesting to talk about. I liked like the Last Jedi deleted scenes tended to be more interesting because there were more story elements to them. But really, like the Solo one, I really need the documentary. I like those behind the scenes type of things where they're not cupcake-ish, but they actually have something of interest and something you wouldn't see somewhere else. And I think that's the value of the extras. And so I think number wise, I'm looking probably 8 to 12 of those documentaries. Again, they don't have to be long. 10 to 15 minutes is usually sufficient to focus on whatever area they are. And then I'm looking for, maybe 3 or 4 at most cool deleted scenes that I can, view and say, okay, we have actually a really good debate about whether or not that should or should not be in the movie.
Yeah.
Should there be an extended cut with those in there? I think that's generally what I'm looking for. The commentary and those types of features, I think, can be really interesting. But I got to be honest, I don't listen to a lot of that because usually there's a lot of gaps in between it and they go off on these tangents and you're not always talking about the movie. So it's difficult to stay engaged with that for 2.5 hours.
Yeah. So I agree with you on the commentary stuff. I think that's always good to have, especially the documentary stuff, I should say. The deleted scenes they're a plus for me just because there's so much that gets shot. And we know there's tons and tons of footage that gets shot that always ends up on the cutting room floor and we never even see it. I mean, and we know that there's plenty more out there that we'll find on a 20th anniversary, a 40th anniversary, never before seen footage, that kind of thing. So those are always cool. But I think for me, it's when I love the candidness of a lot of these shots. Right. When you get to see the actors, and I'm not even talking about the bloopers and stuff. I'm just talking about like the pre and post roll stuff. It's always cool to see them and see how quickly they get into character, how well they come out of character. Sometimes how long it takes for them to come out of character.
The Luke scene from Last Jedi is a great example.
Yep,
yeah.
Exactly. But that stuff is always fascinating. On the commentary tracks, I think I have the opposite opinion. I actually like when they get into, this is probably no surprise, but I like when they get into the really, really like superficial and trivia stuff, like the very trivial type commentary stuff about, you see that one person right there? Well, that's actually so-and-so who was so-and-so's brother on whatever. Like I'm all in on that stuff. I am shocked. It gets committed to memory and it never goes away. So I actually enjoy the commentary tracks because that silly stuff I just cling to and I've done it my whole life. So yeah, the commentary tracks are usually pretty big for me. And that's actually one of the first things. Well, no, I should say deleted scenes are usually the first thing I watch just because they're usually quick. They don't take very long. But then I will try to, make some time to watch some of the commentary tracks and just start absorbing all of that as it plays out.
I think what's making it challenging for the home releases now is that you have comic books that are filling the gaps. You have books and audiobooks that are doing a better job of these expanded editions that they're now getting, more involved with.
Yeah.
It's making it difficult for the actual movie scenes that actually hit the, cutting room floor, that they're actually of something of interest that you didn't get more of.
Oh yeah.
From another piece of content elsewhere. All right.
So, next one.
All right, Utini, thanks for all the questions, buddy. BC White had one here. So while watching A New Hope, he wondered that if the original trilogy was remastered again, would they add cameos or Easter eggs such as Chopper in Rogue One? So who do you think we might see make an appearance since there are so many new characters and content in these timelines now? He thinks maybe like the Ghost in the Death Star battle in Return of the Jedi. And then Stargate Pioneer threw in a little something extra. He would definitely say Mara Jade at Jabba's palace. There are 2 Mara Jade references in the same show.
Yeah, you're welcome, Mike.
Right. So who would they throw in for a cameo or Easter egg?
Oh boy.
So many to choose from.
Yeah, there really is. And I'm actually going to go, I'd probably go in the opposite direction. I would say I'd like to see more Empire people, like more Galactic Empire people, because like Brendel Hux, we know he's around during this time. Ray Sloane's around during this time. Modin Kennedy from Last Jedi is around this time. We know Wolf survived Rebels. So where did he go? He had to have been hopefully around this time as well, if we want to go with somebody that was more on the Rebel Alliance side. But I wish they would expand some of the Galactic Empire stuff, because that was we got a lot of the hero stuff for years and years and years, and it really wasn't until recently, honestly, that we've been getting more and more of the Empire folks via comic books and novels and, the Tarkin, Palpatine, all that stuff. We didn't really get to see a lot of that stuff. So it would be cool for them to kind of reinsert that. If they were, God forbid, to ever go back and remaster that again, maybe it would be cool to see more of the Empire side and balance it out, because I think I've got a different light of them. I've got a different perspective of them now, having seen all the movies, read most of the books, and then even stuff with like the video game Battlefront 2. Now it's my third time referencing. I don't know why, but seeing their perspective and seeing a lot of what happened transpired in the original trilogy through that lens has kind of changed my perspective over just not the Empire, but the everyday people that were impacted positively and negatively by the Empire falling or rising, then falling, that kind of thing. So it would be cool just to see that perspective of them. Beyond that, maybe it would be cool to mix in more ships now, because we've got a larger catalog or library of ships that are out there that we've seen from different shows, that sort of thing. Same thing with aliens. For the longest time, we always had the same aliens. It was always an Ithorian. It was always a Rhodian. It was always, whatever. And now we've got a whole bunch of them. There wasn't a whole lot not a lot of the older aliens in the new trilogy, but maybe there's an opportunity there to kind of mix in some of the aliens we saw from The Last Jedi into the original trilogy, or even The Force Awakens into the original trilogy, so it feels a little bit more cohesive, right? So,
right.
How about you?
I like the idea of the ghost, just since we saw it in Rogue One. I think that's just neat.
Yep,
it's fun. It's fun. We know they were there. Some of them, I think you'd see on the Battle of Endor, you'd have someone call Rex and confirm that that's actually Rex on Endor.
Right.
I mean,
Rex here.
I could see something like that you get this little background noise or the shout where it confirms it for everybody, and everybody gets all bent out of shape.
They'd have to just do the voice. Really excited. Right. All they got to do that. All they'd have to really do is have what's his name come in and do the voice for Rex.
D. Bradley Baker.
Yep, and we're done.
Yeah. So you have those. You could always go with the Ghost crew, Hera or Chopper. You could also do Poe's mom. That would be another interesting one. It would be a pretty deep cut, but at the same time, we know that she was in Rebels. I mean, now we've got Yeager as well.
Yeah.
So you could always throw in some of these really new characters into it, and whether they would stand out or not's interesting. But again, if you're looking for background, and kind of like with Rex, like you see it, someone is like, was that who I think it is, or could it be? And then you have someone just hemming and hawing at Lucasfilm saying, I don't know, maybe, and go from there. So those are some of the few there. I'm not very good at looking at background characters, I got to be honest. And so it would largely be lost on me, but I did catch all the ones in Rogue One, and that was fun, and I thought those were really well done. So if they did a most specialist edition of one of the original trilogies, maybe a few of those might get sprinkled in. But I'd like to see like Yeager or Poe's mom on the rebellion side, because they were so integral in the rebellion. At least Poe's mom was, and supposedly maybe Yeager is too.
Even the like Snap's mom and dad too. They were pretty big.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah,
and I'll back up SB, definitely Mara, Jade, and Jabba's palace.
Yeah, that's a given,
without question.
So yeah, thank you for that question. Next one's for Malice. In Empire Strikes Back, Vader wants to test the carbonite freezing chamber on Han, so Luke isn't damaged. In the Clone Wars, carbonite freezing is used on Anakin, Obi-Wan, and others to infiltrate the Citadel, which I think is from the episode The Citadel, if I'm not mistaken.
Right. So why does it need to be tested on Han when the technology is already established? Right. I think this is the facilities on Bespin. I think Vader even says it, that the facilities are crude. That facility is not intended for carbonite freezing, at least how I interpret it.
Yep.
So they've repurposed it. So this is one of those times where they have to make sure it's going to work and as it's intended, because they've made a makeshift carbonite freezing chamber. Yeah, I'd agree. I think from if I remember correctly too, the carbonite freezing was a way that they would, I think prior to hyperspace travel, they would do this to get around and preserve their bodies and all that. So, and even then it was sketchy at best because of the hibernation sickness. So, and then, I'm trying to think of a good analogy, and I won't get into one, but it's like you said,
it hasn't been done in years, who knows, decades, eons, however long it's been since someone's actually had to do this. And so I think Vader's just being double precautious here and making sure that, Han's disposable. So why not test it out and just ensure that these little stinky pigs are, know what the heck they're doing. So bottom line, better to be safe than sorry more than anything.
Right. I was taken aback in Clone Wars though, where it seemed like they were able to recover rather quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was the part that was more odd to me than anything else. Was I figured carbonite sickness, but maybe it was duration as well.
Or the fact that it was a cartoon that, suspension of disbelief because they couldn't really
pretend I don't even know you anymore.
That's fair. Not the first time I've heard that today, by the way. So,
oh boy.
Yeah.
Okay. Another, we got a couple more here from Four Malice. Oh, this is about me, I guess. We all know Jonesy's infatuation with Obi-Wan's beard. I don't know about infatuation.
Yeah.
Appreciation and criticality of the makeup teams. But who has the best and worst beards in either canon or Legends?
Oh, so I think Luke in The Last Jedi is hands down the best one for me because he's got like the Rob Zombie look, like the Rob Zombie of Jedi beards going on there through most of the movie until the very end. But I think for honorable mentions, maybe Ki-Adi-Mundi and George Lucas.
You got to throw George in there, right?
Yeah, he's got the good beard. Worst beard. So I know that Kenobi beard bothers me to no end, and I just hate looking at it. Like it's cringy or cringe worthy. But Crix Medine's beard is just ridiculous. Like it's just terrible. It's horrible. And the fact that he's got it looks like he's wearing eyeliner in most of those scenes too. So if you ever get a chance, go look up Crix Medine and just zoom in, find a high definition picture of it, zoom in, and you'll see what I'm talking about. It's like, I don't know, 3M carpet or something. It's really bad in terms of the way it looks overall. His hair is not doing anything for me either. He's got the glorified comb over as well. So he's just a bad looking character all around. But
wow, yeah, you got it out for General Medine. So.
Yeah, not a big fan.
Yeah, so where this is all starting for people who are
where is this starting from?
Yeah, just to give you a little background. In Discord, I have a beard, and I appreciate people with good beards. That's all there is to it. And for some reason, at some point, this came up, and I made a comment that someone was saying that Obi-Wan's beards are great, that Ewan McGregor's beards were great, and there is absolutely no question. The beards that Ewan McGregor has grown have been fantastic. But during Attack of the Clones, and everybody has seen this, there are some scenes where the beards just look really, really bad. Mm-hmm. And the reason why is because he was also filming Black Hawk Down. And when he had to come back and do reshoots for Attack of the Clones, he had already shaved his head and shaved his beard. So they had to, fix that. They had to give him a fake beard and fake hair. And you can see that both hair and facial hair are totally different. And the hair on his head is passable. It works well enough, I think. I think you could tell the difference, but if you were a casual viewer, you probably wouldn't notice the difference. The beard, however, is egregious, and it's just unacceptable. And so from that perspective, that's where this is all starting from. And anytime a beard conversation comes up, without fail, I have to bring up Attack of the Clones. Obi-Wan's beard is some of the most egregious in all of Star Wars, and really in any movie at all.
Yeah.
So that's where it's all from. You're all caught up. Congratulations on my weirdness. Now, who else has a great beard? Christopher Lee has always had a very well manicured and a great beard as well. So shout out to the late Christopher Lee. Did I say Reeve? No. Yeah, Christopher Lee.
Yeah.
It's been a long day, folks. He's always had a good one. You know who's Qui-Gon Jinn? So Liam Neeson, what he had
was that real?
Didn't rub me the right way early on, but over time I've come to enjoy and appreciate that a little bit more. So that's another one I kind of like. Yeah, I don't know.
These are hard hitting questions. These are
the questions that our folks want to know. They are critical to their enjoyment of Star Wars.
Absolutely.
And I know Twan he's just laughing his butt off right now. All right. So here's one. I'll pose this to you because it's about us. He's getting very personal today. So Albert and Jonesy seem to have a good rapport. Well, we'll see after this episode.
Yeah. Yeah.
But is this just the magic of editing, or is there really something special with our pairing? what was our biggest disagreement? He wants the dirt. What's our biggest disagreement regarding podcasting and Star Wars?
Yeah,
Yeah, you got to be honest now.
I don't even know that we've ever.
I don't think we've disagreed on anything.
Well, yeah. Well, I won't say we don't disagree on, or we don't.
We don't get heated about anything.
No. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Because I can't think of anything that we've that's ever been contentious or where we've tried to change each other's opinions on stuff.
We have opinions. We have opinions on things, but usually we're pretty good at the give and take and explaining what we're thinking and going from there.
Yeah. But I mean, here's a good example. Like, and this is how getting into how the sausage is made here, if you excuse the expression. But like when we put our show notes together, I don't look at Jonesy's notes. He doesn't look at my notes. We have we'll come up with the content we want to cover. But prior to that, 99.99% of all of the stuff that we come up with and take down for our notes, we don't share prior to coming on to the air. That 1% is really, us trying to decide about whether or not it's something we want to cover, right? Is there enough here? How did you feel about it? That kind of thing. But coming onto the air, this is all, the first time either one of us is hearing the other's opinion on a lot of stuff. And then, as much as I love you, we don't spend a whole lot of time sitting there just, hey, Jonesy, how's it going tonight? We don't spend hours talking every single night. So it's just, I think it really just comes down to, I don't know, a respect, being adults, being older, loving Star Wars and really, valuing other people's opinions, even though they may not agree with you. That's fine. They don't have to agree. I'm not going to go try to change anybody's opinion. Mine's mine, yours is yours. And I think that's kind of what's happened. But I mean, yeah, fundamentally disagree on anything. I mean, there's nothing that I can think of that really has ever come to mind.
Yeah, nothing jumps out at me either. And what you have to understand, so if we record an hour show, we really do that all in about one take. We don't go back and redo this part or that part. I think we've restarted once since we've been doing this for 7 months. And I think that was largely due to a technical issue. And
there was at one time you couldn't remember what to say.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So we do have our flubs. So if we have an hour show,
well, I did it too, but that's fine.
Usually it's like an hour and 5 minutes or something like that. And Mike is trimming out maybe some of the gaps, or if we have a little audio flub, and every once in a while we've got a recording problem or something like that. So, but beyond that, we just kind of keep going. And I think some of it is a mutual trust that we're going to come to the show prepared in how we prepare, at least. And we both kind of know how each other operates and what we're going to do, since we've been doing this. I guess our first one together was like a Canteen After Dark, maybe in January. So what's kind of funny is Albert and I've only known each other a little over a year now. It seems longer than that.
It does.
And we've only been podcasting together for 9 months, and really only about 6 months as a pair. So I appreciate I think we both appreciate the comments, Twan, there, that you feel like we've got a good rapport building here, and hopefully we'll continue that over time.
Yeah. And fun fact for those of you that are listening, Mike is actually a soprano. He does a lot of editing to deepen his voice.
He does.
So what you hear
wants to be Vader so badly.
Yeah. So really what you hear is all been electronically dubbed and modified. So, but don't let him know we told you. So
we think one day he's just going to talk to himself, interview himself, and just see how it goes. According to him, he apparently has done that before. So.
Yeah. No surprise there. All right.
He has recorded Chewie and the Porks.
Let's not drudge that one up again.
Well, join Patreon if you want to hear Mike reading Chewie and the Porks.
Chewie and the Porks. All right.
A Rhode Island story.
Rhode Island story. All right. This next one is from Cab. If you could interview one Star Wars related celebrity on the show, who would it be and why?
Oh, without question, Ralph McQuarrie, if we could. Wow. You had said, you have said this, Mike has said this. Ralph McQuarrie is just so steeped in the history and the creation of Star Wars, the visual aspects of it, that I would just love. I have his tabletop books, and I got to meet his family once. They were at a convention, and man, just awesome people. And it was an amazing talent. Just someone that he's not the Star Wars celebrities we may think of on screen, but I think he is one of the top Star Wars celebrities. Other ones, I like all the behind the scenes stuff. I'd like to meet Mark Hamill and so on and so forth. I've met a lot of the Clone Wars crew from the cartoon, and they're all super great people, and they're awesome. And I love James Arnold Taylor, but Ben Burt and Ralph McQuarrie, these guys who helped really make Star Wars what it is, all encompassing, just blow my mind. I would just love to sit down with them and listen to them talk. I don't even have to ask, just tell me everything you know. Tell me a story.
Yeah.
How about you?
Man, this one was hard because there were so many people.
It was hard.
Yeah. I mean, like the obvious answers for me are like George Lucas, Dave Filoni. I'd even throw in the story group, anybody from the story group, Matt Martin.
That's a good one too.
Pablo, whoever. I wouldn't mind just to kind of get their take on it. But if I had to go with just like the actors themselves, not necessarily the folks behind the creative teams, maybe somebody like John Boyega, and if it's fair game, Joseph Gordon-Levitt, because those two guys are really they're really big fans of this of the whole Star Wars franchise. We knew that coming into the movies, and they've continued to show that throughout all of the movies. But it would be cool because I really don't like when. Like, I really have no interest in reading an interview with any of these folks, the celebrities, the stars of the movies, where someone's asking them questions like, oh, what was it like to work on the film? Or how did you how did you find out when you got the role? Like, that's just not interesting to me. What really interests me is being able to ask someone a really good question, like the morality of the Death Star, or, let's talk about redemption in Star Wars. And what does that mean to you? Give me some examples, right? I want somebody that can actually speak on that level and get into kind of a lot of the fan details, like the hardcore fan details. And I think both of them, and again, I don't know them, but based on what I've read and heard and that kind of thing, both of those guys jump out as folks that individuals that probably could hold their own and have a healthy conversation at that level. So it would be fun to kind of get them on and talk about that stuff rather than, so what was it like working with, just
right.
Who cares? Nobody. They do that all day long on the the press circuit and all that. So,
and that's why I really like James Arnold Taylor and Sam Witwer. They both
See, I didn't even think about those.
They
dudes.
enjoy the fandom so much, and they enjoy the world they live in, and they're fans of the material. And a guy like Sam Witwer, I mean, you'd get along with him great because he does Dungeons and Dragons and everything else too, right?
Throw in Colin Newman there too.
Yeah, I mean, these are just really cool people to be around. At least they seem like really cool people to be around, and they're down to earth, and they're just people you want to hang out with and just hear stories and share stories, and and not treat them like a celebrity, just treat them like everybody else, which is really cool. That seems to like how they want to be treated too, and they're so approachable. I think those are the people I like. The people who are high on themselves, and I've met some of those people within this, like Star Wars actors, and some are clearly better than others regarding to the fans or how tired they are of some of it. But these guys just seem to never tire of it. And the Clone Wars crew has always seemed to have been like that. And when I used to meet them at the Star Wars fan days up in Plano, Texas, I was talking with one of my artist friends that I met up there, Jamie Snell, who's a fantastic Star Wars artist as well, and a bunch of other material that he works on. And man, it was just so much fun. They're so down to earth. They're just so friendly to talk to. I mean, even a guy like, oh my gosh, Ray Park, super awesome just to, hang out with. We got to hang out with him a couple of times, and he really is a nice guy, even though he's got kind of a bad rap in some areas. I've just not seen it. He's always been fantastic. Great. Thanks, you, Cab. Appreciate that. All right. So Discord and social media questions. We'll start off with Eliantra here. So if George Lucas was announced to be helping with any directing or aspect of Star Wars, what do you think the fan reaction would be at this point?
So so this is the one where I think it's based on the level of involvement, right? That I think the level of involvement is directly related to the fan reaction. So if he's come in merely as an advisor or in an advisory role, either on a movie or a show, right? No problem. I don't think there's anything there. I think once he goes beyond that, there's a line that I think once he crosses that, I think we'd have issues. And if I'm Bob Iger, that's kind of the last thing I'd even want right now. It seems like they're really just trying to kind of find their own. Like at some point, they've got to cut this cord. George Lucas is not going to be around. And so they need to figure out how does this franchise move on? And how do they, what do they need to learn from mistakes and just, getting through all this that to kind of live without George Lucas or find their way in their own time. So to be clear, anything in an advisor role I think is fine, but I just think it'd be too distracting and probably just further polarize the fan base if he did anything more. As much as personally, I would like to have him involved more. one, I don't know if he really wants to. I think he likes staying on the sidelines, chiming in here and there, pointing this, just do that kind of thing. But I can't see him coming back to Star Wars. And I don't know that would really, as much as my heart wants him to, I don't think in my head, I don't think it makes any sense. And if I'm Bob Iger or Lucasfilm, any of those guys, Disney executives, I just don't think it would ever be a good time anymore. I mean, something really drastically, terribly would have to happen for them to say, you know what, we're going to have to, break the glass and bring in GL. They're just not there. Again, we've already talked about it. They've made billions and billions of dollars. So,
all right, Carl.
So yeah, I just can't see them doing it. As cool as it would be, I don't see it happening. How about you?
If I'm brutally honest, I view this as we want Dad's approval for everything, where we want him to be involved to say that he likes it. And, or he had, like you said, he's got a little influence here or there on kind of like we did with Solo, right? Just here's a little character moment. Here's something, unique that he brings to the table. But really, I think at the end of the day, all that anybody really wants from George Lucas is to say, I approve of what you're doing. I enjoy what you're doing. Great job. Keep it up. Because if we remember, the fans had a reaction to the prequel trilogy with George at the helm. And even with some of the stories that have come out after the fact, some people were scratching their head and they were, really not sure what they thought about that. And some people were like, that's crap. And other people were like, wow, that's really interesting and cool and different. Mm-hmm. And George has always been pushing the envelope of, I want to do something that's a little bit different, but still feels true to the story and really focus on the story, regardless of all the things that make up the story. So I think I agree with you. I think it would be a very polarizing experience if he came back into the fold as a primary. But at the end of the day, I think what Star Wars fans, as well as these young directors and these people who grew up idolizing Star Wars and idolizing George Lucas, really just want to say, or want to hear him say that he likes what they're doing and that we're going in the right direction and he's going to support us. And I think that's the one thing maybe we're missing from fandom is that overt support. And George has always been a quiet guy. This isn't really him to do this, but just to say, I like what they're doing. I like, this is good, and go from there.
Yeah. Pat on the back kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Great. Next one is from, is it Seamus or Seamus?
I'm not sure. We'll call it. I was going with Seamus. So sorry about that, buddy.
Seamus 15. He's wondering if The Mandalorian will center around Cobb Vanth from the Aftermath trilogy.
Right. So we've talked about this a couple of different times, but I thought it was worth keeping in here. I went back and reread some of the passages and got a little more familiar with the Aftermath trilogy again. It's been a while. And as cool as that story was, in this idea of a sheriff and a lawman, he wasn't a Mandalorian. So, where I can see this maybe still fitting, and because I think this was one of your items, you thought this might be kind of cool as well, Albert. But I thought it might still work if the Mandalorian was if they tweaked that story a little bit, and he was trying to adopt a certain lifestyle or adhere to a certain lifestyle or something like that. But I don't see the connection between a lawman and a Mandalorian, at least from what we've known and seen so far in the Clone Wars primarily. And I mean, we know that, I guess technically Boba and Jango weren't Mandalorians according to canon. Mm-hmm. I still don't know if I completely buy that entirely, but that might just be my headcanon kind of coming into play. But I see the disconnect between this lawman aspect of it. But I thought the story had a lot of promise, and I liked those aspects of the story. So it's not that I have a problem with Cobb Vanth or that being the premise. It's just, how does that fit in with the title of a Mandalorian or the Mandalorian?
And so I think we talked about this. It was on episode 251 when it was first. I think it was right after it got announced. We mentioned that Cobb Vanth could possibly be this character that they're referring to. So, and I don't think they've come out and debunked that or given us really a whole lot more. So that may change here in the next few months. But so let's say if they stick with this, then, I agree. I don't know how they work in The Mandalorian. Maybe he has Boba Fett's armor, and maybe the Mandalorian is Boba Fett and he's come back to get his armor. I don't know. And really or maybe it's him. Maybe it is the Mandalorian. Maybe it is Boba Fett who's now taken on this other persona of Cobb Vanth or something. I don't know. I'm with you there. I hadn't really put much thought into that, but yeah, I don't know how you would tie those two together. just on the surface and what he looked like, and what I remember from the book, I thought it was like, that's a given that it would be him, or at least a high probability that it could be. But yeah, I think depending on how that story goes and what they're trying to do with it, I would like to see him in there, though. I think it would be cool if somehow Boba Fett did get worked into the Mandalorian. In season 1, season 2, it ends with confrontation with Cobb Vanth and Boba Fett coming back for his armor, kind of thing. Who knows?
It's easy to see where we draw these conclusions, though. The title and the pictures that have been released feel very much like a Western.
Yeah.
At least from what we can see so far. But the Mandalorian has a very Western vibe to it from the old, Gunsmoke type days in the old Western movies of, these titles of these shows, and having a guy walk down the sandy roads in a village. Yeah. They all kind of line up with that, but they could line up with 10 other stories, I'm sure, as well.
Yeah.
But thanks, James. Good question. GM2187's got a few here. So he wants to start off with, do we know of any Jedi in canon who had more than one apprentice? Reason for the question is in the Revenge of the Sith novel, which he knows is no longer canon, but Yoda calls Mace his Padawan. But we know that Dooku was also Yoda's Padawan. Qui-Gon wanted to take on Anakin as his apprentice while still having Obi-Wan is another example of that. So I looked this up. I couldn't find another one where they actually had a true one master to many Padawans.
No, and I think if there ever was, it was situational, situational, right. Tactical versus strategic, right? They wouldn't, it was like a temporary thing, to say it an easier way.
So let's ask the follow-up question here too, so I think our answer will kind of wrap up into it. What exactly is the difference between a Padawan and an apprentice? He always thought of a Padawan as a rank, whereas an apprentice could be a Padawan or a Jedi Knight. And that's how I see it exactly. Yeah. An apprentice is just a description, a describing term. Padawan is an actual formal
proper noun,
title or rank. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree. So I don't think there's a difference there. I think they mean the same thing, but you said Padawan's more formal. But definitely both were synonymous for me. I think one, and then the order of things was always youngling, Padawan, Knight, Master. And this is where I think I got it. I don't know if I really get it or not, but like the Master of the Order was all, in charge of all the Jedi. And then the Grand Master was the main person in charge of the Jedi Council. So like you had Yoda as the Grand Master, since he was the head of the council. And then I don't know, I never really got a good sense or feel whether or not Mace and or Yoda played or were also Master of the Order at times. But that was kind of the hierarchy or the ranking system there in terms of the Jedi. But so anyways, I'm going off on a tangent. But yeah, basically the same kind of thing there. They're one and the same.
Right. And to his first stage of the question, the only time, much like Albert was saying, the only place I was able to find or think of were in these times where you did not have a lot of Jedi. So you had one very experienced Jedi, and then he had multiple Force sensitive, I don't know, we'll call them kids, or trainees, where you didn't have enough masters to have a one-to-one relationship. And so we've seen this. We saw this in the Legends novels with Luke, and then presumably this is what happened before between the events of The Force Awakens and Return of the Jedi, where Luke set up a new academy. Presumably he was the only master and had several students, and that's what we're led to believe in the movies at the very least. But those are the only examples I've seen, is we're more in times, because they've more or less had this one-to-one, two relationship, not completely unlike the Sith in the more modern Sith era. But I think that was the only times I was able to figure that out, at least. Are you aware of anything else, or is that
no? I mean, honestly, I'm like digging through my brain here. I can't think of anything, at least canon wise. I mean, even with Qui-Gon, he couldn't take Anakin because they already said you already have Obi-Wan. Yeah, and he quickly said Obi-Wan's ready for the trials. He's done. Well, done with him. I'll take this guy.
Right? Yeah, he's moving on. He was like Sidious. He was upgrading. So, but all right, good question. So GM21, he's got another question here, a little more interesting here. So if Rey constructs a new lightsaber in Episode 9, what color do you think it would be? Not what looks good, but the meaning of the color. And he provided us a video from Star Wars Explained about the colors of the lightsaber and their meaning. And we'll link that in the show notes. So he thinks that it would either be blue or white. Also, what shape do you think the hilt would be? Single lightsaber, dual lightsabers, double-bladed, curved hilt, crossguard. he thinks a double-bladed lightsaber due to her staff, which of course is a very popular answer as well.
Yeah.
So what about this? What color do you think her lightsaber might be, and what do you think her hilt might look like?
So I think we had a very similar question maybe in the last Q&A show that we did. I forget what it was, but so I think so one, I'm a fan of the double lightsaber, but I'm also a fan of her incorporating some kind of a blade into her existing staff, almost like a pole arm. I don't even know that we've ever seen a pole arm in Star Wars, and it's probably not practical unless the rod itself or the staff itself is can't be penetrated by a lightsaber. So assuming that is the case, which I doubt, it would be cool to see a pole arm kind of a play. But I think at the end of the day, she would have a double bladed lightsaber, much like Darth Maul. In terms of the color, I've always, and this is what I think I said last time, I would like to see one side green, one side blue. The blue is Anakin's kyber crystal, and the green is Luke's kyber crystal. And let her run around with that thing. In terms of the hilt and all that, same thing, same answer. Just something would be cool to see that she builds it from like junk, right? She knows exactly as a scavenger. She goes back to her scavenger roots and maybe goes back to Jakku and has all these pieces that she thinks would make a great lightsaber. So it looks very unconventional to what we may have seen with other lightsabers and stuff like that. But it's her own unique twist on it, right? It's very personalized,
right?
And kind of calling back to her roots and how she grew up and all of that. So I don't know if they'd go that far, but I think it'd be kind of cool. So yeah, blue and green. And I've not seen the video, so I'm not sure, what all the significance is of the colors. At least in my head, even with the EU, I think they did some stuff there to kind of do that, but I don't remember them anywhere in canon that they did explanations outside of the Vader comic where they mentioned that it turns red because they make it bleed, and in the Ahsoka novel, all that. But that was really the only thing that I remember from canon, anyways, where they gave some significance to the colors itself.
Right, and that's why I think it won't be white or silver. Is the reason why Ahsoka's is that she basically purified or saved or released, whatever adjective you'd like to use, a Sith crystal or a Sith blood crystal, and it turns white or silver as a result. I don't think she has that opportunity to do that here because she's got Anakin's that he had, so we know that it's blue. The other thing that the video did share is that most of the lightsaber colors start off blue and then they adapt to your style or your belief system or your force aura, if you will, those types of things. And for her, and so that's where which of these colors kind of fit. And everyone, I encourage you to go watch the video. I think that he's taken some liberties with what's canon in there. I still tend to think that we're going to more or less see the colors that we're used to seeing, and it'll be blue, I think, because it's Anakin's. Is that what she has available? I got to be honest, I don't like the idea about a double-bladed lightsaber. I think it worked okay for Phantom Menace, and I think it worked really well in the Knights of the Republic video game, the MMO.
Yeah, SWTOR.
I thought that, SWTOR, there you go. I thought it looked really cool there, but at the same time, I'd like to see her with maybe two lightsabers. Again, I think that's just because it kind of looks cool, but also, again, it gives you that opportunity to have different colors. And so if we do see Luke's green lightsaber come back into the mix, you have some opportunity there. I get the want to see her with the double bladed because she is pretty cool with the staff. It kind of reminds me a little bit of the Jedi temple guards that we've seen in Clone Wars.
Oh yeah,
they've got that really thick hilt. I didn't necessarily look like that exact design, and I think we also saw that in Clone Wars and the Shadows of Umbara with that Jedi Master. His name's Krell. We saw the same type of thing, really thick hilt there. But aside from that, I think it's going to be blue. I think that still fits her because it's, she's still, I think, generally pretty pure of spirit, and blue is usually your more centered Jedi for a while until they show something else. Green is always associated with power and also the Jedi consulars, negotiation. I don't really see her as a negotiating type, like you would a Qui-Gon or a Yoda or something like that. So I'm going to go with blue.
If you want to see a double lightsaber, Satele Shan is the character that wields the double blue lightsaber in SWTOR. So
She was
there's
awesome
some really,
too.
there's
I
some
love
cool
those
videos.
cutscenes. Yeah,
Those cool cutscenes from that. If you ever want to go YouTube those, a lot of fun to watch.
cinematics rather. Yeah, they were great.
Cool. All right, let's do this. We're on an hour here, so we're getting out of time. But all right, here's one from Crowley. He'd like to hear a character comparison between Beckett and Greedo, specifically around their jobs in the galaxy, their relationships to Han, and their moral characters.
Right. A little bit of setup here in Discord. Crowley had watched Solo and
Just
thought
now?
that, yeah, he's a little behind. And so,
Okay. All right.
when he watched it and Han killed Beckett, he thought that was very out of character for Han, and he thinks that this has very serious ramifications for how he views Han as a cold-blooded killer, less so than the good guy, and that has really negatively affected his moral character. So I hope I've summarized that very quickly, Crowley, for you. And so what he wanted to see was, okay, what's the difference between Beckett and Greedo with how Han addresses both of those, and again with what Beckett and Greedo's jobs are, and to where I think more or less justifying Han's action in each of those scenarios, which seem somewhat similar, but he views as very, very different.
Well, so maybe here's the thing. It's hard to answer this question because we don't know what happens between Solo and A New Hope. And we've talked about this on the show before. There's something, I think, and maybe they allude to this to some extent, but it seems like there's something that happens, and maybe this moment where he shoots Beckett is the first part of it. It's the catalyst. It's the first step in going down this path where he is much more focused on himself, and he becomes a little bit more ruthless. He becomes a little bit more edgy, shady, sketchy, whatever you want to use there. But I think some of it stems from Kira's perspective in going back to that movie in the novel where she's talking about, it's not about winning. It's just trying to stay in the game as long as you can. He had it in his mind for whatever reason, call it his gut, call it his intuition, that Beckett was going to kill him. And we get confirmation from Beckett himself saying, "You did the right thing, kid. I was going to kill you." So we know he was going to do it. He followed that intuition to the most logical conclusion, which was, if I'm going to stay in this game, it's not to win. I just need to stay in it. I need to get to Kira. I need to take this person out, even though I looked at him as a mentor and all that. That's where I think the conflict starts. And I think it eventually he does go down a path so that when we do see him in A New Hope, he is that kind of ruthless person. And say what you will about whether or not he shot first and all that. He just shot. That's how it was originally cut. And I think that was George Lucas's intent all along. I don't really understand why they made the change. And there's a lot of different versions as to why. But so anyways, I think it's really just goes back to that philosophy. I think this is the first start in him going down that path. In terms of Beckett and Greedo, they, one's a smuggler, one's a bounty hunter. They differ greatly in terms of their relationship to Han. Again, Han looked up to Beckett, whereas Greedo was maybe his competition. Maybe they had run-ins, maybe they had some, who knows? We don't know there's really not a lot in canon with regards to Greedo. So we don't know what kind of relationship they had there or just how competitive that was. I think Jabba probably looked more favorable upon Greedo than he did Han. And the only thing I can think of where we would get any confirmation of that is when, after he finds out Greedo's dead, he mentions, "Why did you have to fry poor Greedo?" Right. So
right.
He's almost whatever compassion you can get from Jabba. That's probably it. But it seems like that he was probably favored. He probably favored Greedo more than Han. So yeah, I don't know. I just think that was probably his approach in kind of starting again down that path and
I can't help but think, Greedo had a gun pulled on Han and was basically threatening him. Now, I don't know that he was going to follow through with that because clearly Han had a lot of value to Jabba, but he made the decision there. And I keep wondering if Beckett would have made a motion to do that, would this change this conversation entirely to where you have confirmation that Beckett really was going to do it? And I think some of Crowley's perspective was that Beckett was very much a mentor, and we have confirmation of that from Han in the books, that he viewed Beckett as a mentor. But then again, it was clear that he was going to betray him. And if we take Beckett at his word, like he said, he definitely was going to kill him.
Yeah, he said, "Don't trust anybody."
That's right. I mean, he warned him, and Han learned the lesson very well. And was it a little out of character and a little sudden? Yeah, I'll give you that. It took me off guard when it happened too in the theater. And actually, every time I see it, and it does seem a bit quick. Cinematically, I would have liked to have seen Beckett starting and then just have Han be that much quicker.
Yeah,
That's
like whole gunfight.
a bit of a gunslinger thing, right? Yeah, a showdown there. I think that would have been a little more interesting and may have colored this view of it a little bit differently. But I still view it in that same context like you do. This was very much, he knew it was going to happen, and we have confirmation of that. And I don't think it changes Han's moral character too much, but I can definitely see why it might give you pause about that. I don't know that I agree with Crowley all the way on the pendulum that he swung on this one, but generally speaking, I can understand why that would give you pause, because it definitely caught me off guard when we saw it, at least the first time. All right. Thanks for the question, Crowley. Neb512, what is something you'd want to change in the new trilogy?
Yeah, so this goes back to what we were saying early on. If it's about the sequel trilogy, because I think it says the new trilogy, but if we're talking about the sequel trilogy, I don't think I have very specific changes I would make, to the story. What's been done is done. That is canon now. And it's easy to quarterback that stuff all day long. And everyone has an opinion. But again, my changes really would be more systemic in nature in terms of the storyline. So the storylines between 7 and 8 not being cohesive enough for me. I mean, we're fastly approaching the 1 year anniversary of the Last Jedi, and even after now multiple viewings and dissections and all the stuff that we've done on the show, and just in my own personal time and watching it with time to think, reevaluate, assess the impact on The Force Awakens and the sequel trilogy as a whole. I mean, my stance really hasn't changed. They're two very great movies. They feel like they were set out to tell two aspects of the story, like two different stories to some extent. So I would have liked to maybe have them map all that out for all three of the movies, come from a single focused storyline perspective that included the characters, the origins, the fates, certainly more of the heavier plot point and elements in all of that. I would have liked to, if the question is what I would have changed, I would have liked to make sure that was first and foremost taken care of before we said, okay, now who are our directors, who are going to be the actors, and what kind of styles are we going to do, and where are the funny moments and all that. All that's fine, but to me, that probably is the thing that I would have changed first, is make sure that focus was there. Yeah,
it's difficult to really answer this question because since we don't have the full trilogy yet.
That's fair.
To be fair, yeah. And because my first inclination is I want to see more Luke Skywalker, right? Because Luke growing up was perhaps my favorite character and the one I enjoyed watching the most. And so why wouldn't you want to see more of that character later on, right? I think a lot of people feel that way in some capacity. I understand the story that they wanted to tell, and especially the position he was in with Last Jedi. And the more I thought about that, I thought that was a bold decision. And I think that was a very unique take. And on a level, I can definitely understand why that's more interesting than him still being the hero. But I think in general, I just wanted to see him more in action. You want to see him still have those heroic moments while he's still, and we can argue that he still has that moment, but maybe not in the way that we always had hoped and dreamed. But it's really difficult to really be fair about it until we've seen how all three fit together. Because again, like you said, I don't understand what this means for the Skywalker line. If these are the Skywalker saga, we've not really talked about the heritage of the Skywalker name so much right now in those kind of terms. We see Ben Solo, we've seen the Han and the Leia and the Luke aspects, but we don't know how they tie together because the story still seems focused on Rey, and we don't necessarily have complete closure around her heritage. So maybe that's not important, and they're gonna prove once and for all that that's not important. But I think those are the potential changes we might see. But I'm still holding out for what we're going to see in episode 9, and what are our next steps from there. Then we can answer this question about, okay, overall, what would we have wanted to do differently?
Yeah.
But I want to see them finish the story before we get too critical about it or start retconning things in our own head.
All right, let's get the last two. We got about 5 minutes here. We'll get to the last two. RC1313. What character in the new trilogy do you think is the most dynamic and relatable?
Wow, that's actually kind of difficult because I haven't found many to be super dynamic. And I think this this is part of, I think I'm having a hard time relating to some of the characters or their scenarios as well. And I don't know why that is. I'm enjoying the movies, but I don't necessarily see myself like I did with Luke, or some of those characters, like we talked about earlier, having a best friend in Chewbacca or R2-D2. There are moments where we have that connection with them. I think Rey has moments of being dynamic or relatable, maybe not as much the dynamic side, but more relatable and Kylo to an extent as well, of what does it mean to feel lost or to be confused about your future or how you fit. I think those are very relatable terms. And so from that aspect, I would definitely say Kylo and Rey. The dynamic part, I'm not feeling that as much, but the relatable part, I'd go with those two characters.
Yeah, and those are my answers as well. So one, I don't think dynamic and relatable are mutually exclusive. I think they're kind of independent. They can be independent of one each other. If it's merely dynamic, I'm gonna have to say, at least for now, if we're talking about the new trilogy, it's probably Kylo Ren, just because he's so all over the place in terms of his anger and the emotions, and he seems to have some kind of affinity for Rey, yet he's killing his dad. And I mean, who knows? It's just, there's a dynamic aspect of him from that perspective. If it's relatable, then I think it's Rey, because she is the closest person I can think that would be the voice and the avatar of the fans coming into this new trilogy so many years later. Like, what is going on? What does all this mean? We need, she says, I need someone to show me my place in all this. Yeah, we do too, as an audience. She's yelling at Luke like we are. Get off your butt. Go save the galaxy. Why aren't you doing this? Kylo, you killed your own father. You jerk. These are all things that we were saying, and she's out there doing the same stuff too in the movies. If I had to pick one that was both dynamic and relatable, I guess maybe it's Luke, because you may not agree, again, like kind of what you're saying earlier. You may not agree about what he did and how he reacted after Kylo turned on him, but I can see it as a possibility. And at least, again, I can see that. So in that aspect, I think it's dynamic. It's not what I would have expected, but I can relate to it because I can see why he would do that. So I don't know. I'm kind of forcing a square peg in a round hole, but that's about as good as I can get right now, especially since we've got still another movie to go. And, I guess the jury's still out on some of that stuff.
All right. So our last question here is from Star-Lord from Discord. As the Star Wars universe grows, do you like the idea of making up new characters for TV shows and movies, or would you rather have more backstory to existing characters? So this is, again, kind of a continuation of some of the conversations we've had over the last several months now. So where do you stand today?
So I'm fine with more characters, so long as they, it's not a quantity over quality kind of thing. But even then, I'll put an asterisk on that, and I'll come back to that in just one second. So I think in the old EU, the galaxy always felt a little too small for me. There was always, as massive as it was, it seemed like every bounty hunter worked for Jabba, and every bounty hunter was secretly out to kill Jabba, and every character wound up on Tatooine for some reason, or had a relationship with another character, right? That just seemed like it was just a common theme throughout all of the EU. And I love the idea of world building and it really starts with planting, these seeds with new characters, new locations, new story threads. All that stuff is fine. So, I'm okay with them throwing stuff out there. Just make sure that it's got good hooks that people can build upon later.
Right.
I'd be totally fine with it. I think we've got a lot of great characters already, especially not so much in the movies, but like in the novels and video games and comics, that there's a lot of potential there that if they really want to do some additional like story building, they can on the big screen or the small screen. We were talking about some of these before coming on the air, but like Afra, Mr. Bones, Shriv, you throw in Snoke, right? There's plenty of stuff that we can do there. So I think they've done an okay job, and I would be fine with them adding more. I think we're going to get a lot more when we get to like the TV shows and the new trilogy, especially since it's supposed to be unrelated to all of this stuff as well. I think what we're seeing in Resistance is going to start setting and planting seeds for things that we'll see later on. I'm totally down with all of that. And it just really goes back to my comfort level with Disney being able to successfully manage all of these IPs and all that stuff. They can do this. Again, you can make the argument that the movies came in too fast, way too fast, and they pumped the brakes a little bit there. But, this is what Disney does. And they've been doing it for years, and they've done a pretty good job. And by all accounts, they've been pretty successful with the Star Wars franchise. So how about you?
Right.
Sorry.
And we've seen them be very successful with new characters. Asajj Ventress is one of the best characters that they've come up with that was outside of, really the novels or the movies, and developed specifically for comic and TV. And she turned out to have an amazing story arc. And even with characters who have been very background, pulling them to the surface and giving them a story like a Quinlan Voss or some of these other, the clones in particular, giving them more, just something more to grab onto and something more interesting, and giving you an idea of what it means to be that character and the different choices and challenges that they're presented with. We've seen a lot of new characters in TV shows already, and they've done exceptionally well. And they're now very much part of our fandom and what we enjoy about Star Wars in general. So we have to keep introducing new characters, because otherwise the old characters get old, they die, they get stale, and you've kind of bled them for all they're worth. Some characters are always going to be there. Vader is always going to be present because he's so popular, as well as even characters like Luke, who they really haven't touched in a while. And so I think we will still see the older characters work their way in, because they're kind of they're what you're going to you're going to sell that.
Yeah, they're legendary.
Right. Yeah, that's right. They're legendary status. They're this, something that you can't live without in some capacity. But in order for this thing to continue breathing and have life beyond those characters, you've got to build strong ones. And I totally agree. Characters like Afra are a breath of fresh air, something interesting, very difficult to understand characters at times, and that makes them very complex. And you don't always know which side of the fence they're going to play. So I would love to see them continue to work that into the TV shows. I think shows like Resistance give you that flavor. You get a little bit of the characters but you get a lot of these new characters that you don't know. And that's something that Clone Wars did pretty well too with Anakin and Obi-Wan, even though, we thought that show was going to go in a completely different direction, but turned out it worked really, really well. So we know they can be successful at this, and they don't have to keep shrinking the world. It seems like they're still shrinking the world a bit to me, or the universe, but I think we will start to see that shift. But it takes courage, and it takes a great story, and it takes us as fans some patience to let these develop a bit before we weigh judgment on it. We can't just jump to the conclusion that, well, this is for kids, we hate it, or this doesn't tell the story I like, I hate it. So we be patient, we let the stories play themselves out, we see where they go, and then we see what resonates over time, because our position will change a little bit on this stuff too. And that's not a bad thing either. We don't have to be so rigid in our fandom. But so I still like the mix, but we need new characters if this thing is going to live on, past our days.
Which are numbered.
They are fewer days ahead than behind, unfortunately.
Yes, sir. All right. Well, thank you, Star-Lord, and thank you, everybody, for all of the questions. That was our last one, just because we are out of time. But before we go, if you have not heard, we are part of the Earglue Media Network, eargluemedia.com. That is the podcast network that Mike started up. And under that umbrella, we've got the Cantina Cast, we've got Bad Gamers Anonymous, we've got The Basement, we've got a project that I still don't know whether or not it's a secret or not, but Mike's doing something else there. So take a look at the website, take a look and support all of the shows when you can. Subscribe to those. You're going to hear a lot of the same familiar voices that you've heard on all of, on Cantina Cast and The Basement. It's all the same people. We're just doing different stuff. So please support us in that aspect. If you want to find us on the social media pages, you can do that. We'll put the links in there as well. And then we're always looking for additional questions to cover. So we've been trying to do this at least once a month. And if you've got questions specifically you'd like for us to answer on the show, you can send us an email at the cantinacastfanmail@gmail.com. Hit us up in Discord or on the social media pages. If you've got a question, you can go that route as well. With that, I think we'll end the show next week. We are coming back, and so 255, we're going to start dipping our toes very slightly and easing into the comic book world. So we will be taking a look at the Darth Vader comics, and we've got a couple things that we're still floating on. I don't think we've landed exactly where we're gonna be, but this will be a slow, again, and easy approach into the comic sphere. So it's something I'm excited to do just because I've always been a huge fan of comics. I know, Jonesy, you have been as well, at least and you've had interest in some of these.
Right.
Hopefully we'll get into like the Afras and the Mr. Bones and all these other characters that we know have been really hugely popular in the comic world. So we'll kind of give a Cantina Cast spin on those coming up very shortly. So look forward to that sometime next week. And with that, anything else before we head out?
No, have a happy and safe Halloween for those with little ones, and be safe out there.
Yeah. Well, I forgot. Yeah. Next week is Halloween. We're doing Star Wars. You guys do anything funny?
No, I think we're going to record Star Wars for the Cantina Cast. But
beyond that,
I think, no, Haley, I don't even know what she's going to be. She changes her mind like every 5 minutes. We probably have several costumes by this point. I don't even know.
So we've got just real quickly, we've got Kylo Ren. We have the youngest is going to be Luke Skywalker in a Rebel in a TIE fighter pilot, or sorry, X-Wing fighter pilot
Nice.
gear. So he'll be in that little jumpsuit. We've got that already here. We've got a Stormtrooper, and then we've got the Last Jedi Rey costume for my daughter, who's super excited. So
What are you dressing up as?
I don't know. I haven't really even thought about it. Really, it's just been about the kids. So I may not do anything outside of just walk with them. I've got a really sweet Rebel pilot jacket that I may throw on, and you'll see it. It kind of looks like a costume. I don't know. I have no idea what I'm going to do just yet. So
Nice.
maybe we'll post a picture on social media at that point. But anyways, we're way over
We have
on
some
time.
Star Wars fans on our block that love to dress up like Han and Leia, and they actually do a really great job. They're not prop accurate, but they're definitely above average or way above average for the typical Halloween costumes and
Yeah.
the buns and everything else. And he's a tall, dark-haired guy, so he kind of fits it pretty well. So it's always fun to see if they're going to keep that up or do another little spin on it.
All right. Well, yeah. With that, good, happy Halloween, and we will see you guys next week.
You're still listening? Wow, that's amazing. Well, I'm here to give you the disclaimer. Normally we do a big, long, drawn-out disclaimer thing saying what's what and who's what and all that other stuff, but I think you guys kind of know that Lucasfilm and Disney have no affiliation with us at all, and we have none with them. We talk about Star Wars, which is their property and all that other good, fun stuff, but I think you can tell which is our stuff and which is their stuff. If you can't, well, then send a lawyer to send an email to me, and I'll be glad to chat with them. Other than that, you know what's what, so that's your disclaimer.